that's fine.
I want to welcome everyone to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Bob Kerwin. And this afternoon we have another session of the Meet the Candidates radio show. Interesting day today. I go back 6 years to August 25th, 2008. And it was on the Learning Clinic show that day that the switch was flipped to have our first online stream. So ever since that day, August 25th, 2008, all of the shows are streamed live on the internet across the world. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of like a little anniversary that today is our anniversary of going live on the internet. This afternoon, in the studio with me, I have Jesse Gaudet. Is that pronounced?
Yeah.
Jesse Gaudet, and Jesse, you are running for the position of council in Ward 3. So Jesse Gaudet, who is Jesse Gaudet? Maybe we'll start that way. Explain to the listeners just what your background is, who you are, everything that they should know about you as a candidate for council in Ward 3.
Yeah, certainly. Basically, I have a degree in history and political science. I took a double major. I did 2 years here at Laurentian, and I'm finishing up now at Athabasca University. It's all done online through Alberta.
Okay, you're right. That's the one that I think the whole university is online, isn't it? Or a good portion of it?
They have a campus, but it's basically more online than it is on-site.
I'm not going to get off track for very long here, but I love the fact that Athabasca University allows people to get pretty much the courses that they might not be able to get at their own site,
Yeah.
and allows you to complete your university. You can accelerate it if you want, or take it over a longer period of time, can't you?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I've been doing. I've done 2 years now in one. We're taking me 4 semesters, so 2 years. I've actually compressed it down into 1 year with 4 semesters in 12 months.
And the timing is perfect because you're into a full-scale political campaign. So let's get back on track. I won't diverge anymore. So who is Jesse Gaudet?
So basically, I've worked at various levels of politics. I've done provincial, federal. I've worked with a lot of the riding associations, held positions on some of them. Currently, I'm a youth officer. So basically, I'm involved in politics. I get out, community events. Often people see me at community events, and I'm just active in the community. And I'm hoping to hopefully bring some new ideas to City Council and bring some change.
And you live in, whereabouts do you live?
I live in Chelmsford.
You live in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
Grew up in Timmins, though.
Yeah, I moved here when I was about I think about 15 or 16.
Okay, so you've been around for the last little while and seen some of the changes. I'm kind of curious because it's unusual that you see someone that has so much involvement in the partisan politics at your age, and your degree is definitely history and political science. So how do you get interested in politics at a young age, especially when you're in high school or whatever? Because it's not normal for people to get interested in politics with high school students. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, a lot of people my age, as soon as they hear politics, they don't want to talk about it. Or basically, a lot of it was I saw, on TV in the news, different things, and I saw, different policy ideas, and I'm like, hey, those are things that I think I'd like to see done. Those are things that I'm passionate about, and then that's sort of how it just kind of snowballed from there into picking up a couple of different policy ideas that really interested me, and then from there I just wanted to learn more and more about it.
Now, interestingly enough, when you go from the provincial and the federal arena into the municipal arena, it's a different game altogether. I mean, the political and the provincial and federal, obviously control a lot of what happens locally because they control a lot of the funding.
Yeah.
But what is it that would have got you interested in municipal politics after you've been involved with a lot of the behind-the-scenes work with provincial and federal?
What I really enjoy with the municipal is the fact that it's on a smaller scale. There's more interaction with citizens. You know, a riding on the provincial or federal scale can have, you know, upwards of 100,000 people. The municipal, you really get down. You know, the whole municipality is, you know, we're looking at around 160,000 for Sudbury. So, you know, it's a little bit smaller scale, and there's, you know, there's more of that one-on-one interaction with people. And you can really, you know, get involved a little bit more.
I also know, because I've grown up in the Sudbury area all my life, I know that when you take communities like Chelmsford and Onaping and Dowling, they have a small town atmosphere and a small town expectation of their councillors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're accustomed to what it was like before. We don't want to talk about amalgamation, but they're accustomed to knowing and seeing and talking to their councillors. That's a little different than what you see in the provincial and federal too, because
Yep.
you've got such a wide area. You mentioned that you're getting involved quite a bit in the community. Are
Mhm.
there any things you want to say that you're kind of finding are some really good areas for you to find out what's going on locally?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of places that people can get involved. You know, just next month actually, I have there's going to be a meet and greet in Onaping Falls for citizens. You know, the city's going to be doing a presentation on the election process. So that's the Onaping Falls Community Action Network. So there's a lot of different things like that. A lot of community action networks that people can get involved with. And I think it's great that people want to get involved, and I think they should get involved, because I think they should be, you know, informed about the process and how it's done.
Do you have an active CAN out in your work?
Sorry?
At the Community Action Network, do you have an active committee out in Chelmsford or Onaping?
Onaping has one. I don't believe that Chelmsford has one.
But there
at
is
least
one in your ward at least.
Yes, yeah, there is one in the ward.
Okay. People have been looking at the Community Action Network, and I mean, you've got two schools of thought. Some really operate well and are really active, and they've got a lot of volunteers, and others it's they have to fight to get people out to the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Any particular thoughts on how you want to use the Community Action Network if you get elected?
Yeah, like, I mean, I would definitely like to see, you know, a higher level of involvement, but, you know, to get the higher level of involvement, you have to get people interested. And I think, you know, that's the first step to getting those higher levels, is to, you know, perhaps have an awareness campaign, because a lot of people don't even know that these community action networks exist.
I know. I know, it's kind of a difficult to get volunteers when people don't know they exist. You've obviously, you declared that you're running, you've thought about this, you've talked to people out there. Are there any issues that are coming to the forefront in Ward 3 that you've noticed are kind of heavier?
Yeah, one of the big things obviously I've been hearing about, and I think it goes for pretty much any ward, are roads. People are, you know, they're not happy with the roads, especially after the harsh winter we had. But one of the things too that I'm hearing a lot about in the ward is how the municipal government has sort of tailored more to the needs of Sudbury and kind of left some of the outlying areas a little bit more excluded. And you get that especially the further you go down the ward, so Dowling, you know, Onaping, Lavat. Those communities really feel excluded because they are quite a ways away from Sudbury.
Yeah, Onaping would probably be similar to Capriol, where prior to amalgamation, they were a real tight-knit community because it was like their little island.
Yeah.
They were like on their own, and so they had their own government, they had their own system, and that community was pretty solid. You now have a situation where, when they're part of Chelmsford, I mean, population-wise, yeah, there's probably between 10 and 15,000 people
Mhm.
that are, I'm not sure if it's eligible to vote or if that's the population, but it's a smaller chunk than the 160,000.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I can imagine that there's still some people who are a little bit upset with the fact that they're lumped into the entire city of Greater Sudbury. And I don't know whether the service level is all that much lower, but the perception is that.
Mhm.
And I know even out in the valley, we get that same perception. It just doesn't seem to be at the same level as it was before. I think that the wards in Sudbury, you'll probably find the same thing being said, that the level of service has gone down. But that is one of the things that councillors are gonna have to really deal with, because I don't think we can take another 4 years of this constant complaining that the level of service is down, because unfortunately our taxes continue to go up.
Mhm.
You must be hearing the fact that taxes are going up and service is going down.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, there's a lot of people out there that are concerned not only about the tax increases this year, but next year. I mean, city council is projecting a 5% increase in taxes.
That's kind of frightening, isn't it?
And I mean, that's only an estimate. I mean, often we get to budget time and they say, oh, well, you know, there's so many shortfalls in the budget, and they have to increase those numbers. So, I mean, that's something that I think needs to be looked at. And obviously one thing that I'd like to, you know, bring in is a mandatory spending every 4 years of all programs and services that the city offers. You know, examine, you know, why is this particular service higher than the rate of inflation for a service that should be at or lower than the rate of inflation. So basically any savings that are found there, you know, can be brought to be used to bring down property taxes.
Any specific areas that you've looked at that you think that could apply to?
I mean, it's the budget. I mean, a lot of the budget goes, you know, to policing, to roads. I mean, those are things that have to be done. But I mean, I think there's ways that we can perhaps find greater efficiencies in the road systems, the infrastructure systems, just to make sure, you know, we're getting, you know, the best labor cost and things like that. Just to, you know, because those eat up a large section of the city budget every year. So.
Mm-hmm. Any other issues?
One of the other issues, a lot of people, like you were saying, a lower level of service. And, you know, people are saying, well, you know, we used to get this, but we don't get it anymore. Is it the case? I'm not entirely sure. But there's definitely, people are feeling that they're being ignored. And I think that's one of the big issues. So, you know, what I'd like to actually do is set up especially with regards to the roads, because, I mean, everybody's got complaints about roads, right? So I'd like to actually set up a public forum, so, you know, people go online or by phone, and they submit their complaints or concerns about certain roads or infrastructure projects. And then, you know, city council can look at those and say, well, you know, this road is a high volume road of complaints. And then they can prioritize accordingly to their needs. And I think that would definitely get people, you know, perhaps feeling that they're being heard a little bit more.
That's a good one. How about public transit out in your area?
It's not reliable at all. I mean, a lot of people use it in the ward, especially, you know, students or seniors. And the issue is you can often wait upwards of over an hour for the next bus to come around. Weekends, especially Sundays, even worse. And then half the ward doesn't even have proper bus transit. You know, they get shuttled onto a bus, especially, you know, Darwin, Onaping, and Labatt. Those are the areas that actually get shuttled onto a separate bus. You know, I understand the volumes are lower in those areas, but I think that something, you know, has to be done with regards to maybe a little bit more reliable and frequent transit, because often people are saying, you know, their gaps are an hour apart, and then the buses can be either 15 minutes early or half an hour late. So that's something I think that really needs to be addressed.
It's a difficult topic, because I know when you take a look at the budget, I think it's in the area of 10 million being generated in revenue and close to 18 million in costs for the
Mhm.
transit service that we have now. So any improvement would have to basically be covered by increased revenue. And I'm not sure if there would be that much more usage with the improved service. I mean, this is one of those big ticket items that I think as councillors, we have to be aware that we have to provide the service, because there's some people that depend on it 100%.
Yeah.
There's others that use it because it's convenient, but for the people who need it, we have to provide it, but wow, it's expensive.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. I mean, that's the issue that the next term we'll definitely have to look at, is, you know, trying to balance the cost with the actual revenue. And again, that's something that if there's different savings to be had somewhere else, I mean, I think that's something, transit is a huge priority. You know, some people without transit, you know, can't get to work, can't get to school, or can't get the basic needs that they need. So I think transit is something that really needs to be of high importance in the next coming term.
When we take a look at issues that are ward specific, and we take a look at issues that are citywide specific, are there any that you feel the city as a body have to really take a look at over the next 4 years that you've identified?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things, and I think they need to, you know, the next term really needs to start to look at, is the need to sort of kind of examine business investment and encourage business investment in the city. You know, I know in Ward 3, often a lot of businesses are up, you know, they're closing, they're moving elsewhere. Some are moving to Sudbury, some are just closing altogether. And I know there's some other wards, specifically in Sudbury, that are having the same issue. Businesses are not being profitable anymore, or you know, the city just can't encourage a high level of business investment, especially in the downtown area, things like that. There's certain particular areas in town that just can't get that business investment, and that's something that is very important.
Any ideas on how we achieve that goal?
I mean, I think one thing, you know, definitely we have to look at taxation for businesses, ensure that it's obviously as low as possible, but without, you know, decreasing revenue. You know, if we start to lower business taxes, that takes a chunk out of revenue that's needed. But I think maybe perhaps looking at some sort of property or business tax freeze for, you know, a couple of years, 2-3 years, and trying to get businesses to invest locally again.
Are we almost gonna have to do what we're doing with doctors? We're gonna have to go out and find some kind of incentive package to bring them here?
I mean, sadly, it's to the point where, you know, something has to be done. Businesses just simply don't want to invest in Sudbury. You know, is it because of taxes? Is it because of, you know, excess red tape? It's difficult. But I think the next council should work directly with businesses and the Chamber of Commerce as well, and examine, you know, what the needs are for businesses. You know, if they're saying taxes are too high, then that's something that needs to be addressed to foster more investment.
Your particular generation, and I think the unemployment rate is like double the national average for
Yeah.
people under the age of 30.
Mhm.
Gotta be a major concern for young people going to school here.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to all sorts of people of all ages, but especially the young people are saying, you know, just can't find work. And I think that's, there's a lot of young people that are just up and leaving Sudbury and going elsewhere, either to Southern Ontario or out west. And I think that's something that we need to perhaps look at, perhaps work locally with the universities and the colleges in the city, and trying to get some of those younger, graduates and students to find local employment in the city, because, like I said, they're leaving in large numbers.
Be able to have part of that conversation with Bill Best. He's going to be in the studio later on. He's the new president of Cambridge. But I think one of the things that concerns me is that it's not just a matter of the unemployment rate. I think that if you took the rate of young people who are in a job in their chosen career, your rate would be much higher for non-success. That there's a lot of people that are getting jobs, but they're waiting to get that position in the career that they went to school for.
Yeah.
And I think, like, how does that play on the young people? Because we're talking about, there's a big push, obviously, in this campaign to try and get more youth involvement, more younger people getting involved in their local politics. But as you say, when you talk to your friends, it's like politics. That's the furthest thing from their mind, and yet it's having a major effect on whether they can stay here or not. It's, are there any specific ideas other than, because it's kind of dovetails on with, we have to get more businesses here, because if we don't get the businesses, we don't have the jobs. But what about the amount of work we're doing in information technology to try and get that intellectual industry, pushing the technology industry? Like, that's where a lot of the younger people are focused on.
Yeah, I mean, when you look, Sudbury is years behind other cities in terms of the information technology. And I mean, there are programs directly here in Sudbury, there's computer science at Laurentian University. And there's a whole bunch of different degrees that students can take here in Sudbury. But often, they're going elsewhere again because the jobs just aren't here. So I think that's one thing that the city needs to look at is perhaps diversifying the economy. I mean, nobody's going to argue that the city's heavily invested in mining, but I think that there are other segments of the economy that we have to try and look at and try and grow to keep those young people here in Sudbury.
Yeah, like, for example, look at the School of Architecture that's going to start graduating people. Will they be able to stay locally?
That's the big question. I mean, it's going to be tough, but I think the big step is to get the school here. Once the school is here, I think hopefully business investment will follow. But if not, I mean, that's something that, Laurentian is spending millions on this school, so it's something that I think next term of city council really needs to focus on and make sure that those jobs do follow the degrees.
Are we doing a good enough job of marketing the community and the city of Greater Sudbury to the students, the post-secondary students that are going through our institution?
I don't believe so. Often, there's a big push for, encouraging, downtown, shopping, things like that. The issue is that in terms of most of the universities or colleges in the area, they're further out. They're in the outlying areas. Like Laurentian University isn't really close to any businesses. Cambridge is a little bit better, but it's still sort of excluded. So I think that one of the things they need to look at is perhaps trying to drive out business into those areas, or having, you know, perhaps either a transit service or something like that to those areas they want to encourage, like the downtown core, and, you know, just get students down there, you know, doing some shopping, eating, whatever the case may be. And then I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked at.
Yeah, like we market the post-secondary institutions to the students and try to encourage them to come into our schools.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think we have to take a better look at is if we do too good a job of bringing people into our post-secondary schools from outside the area,
Mm-hmm.
will they have a place to live when they get here? Student accommodation is, to me, I think student accommodation is a big problem
Mm-hmm.
with the out-of-town students.
Yeah.
And we kind of, if we don't have enough space, and I think when we get back to student accommodation, now it becomes a matter of what do we do as a city council to make sure we're building or we're giving developers the incentive to put up student residences, where generally they're gonna have to deal with a lot of opposition from residential areas that do not want a student residence in the middle of their
Mm-hmm.
subdivision. But it's like, if we don't do it, how can we kind of open our doors to the students from across the world? And I know that Laurentian, for one, is really engaging in a strong marketing campaign to try and get
Yeah.
people to come to Sudbury.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Laurentian has done, they've taken massive strides to try and get people from outside of Sudbury to come into university, both internationally with exchange students, as well as a lot of people from, you know, Southern Ontario are actually coming up to Laurentian, either for the small classroom sizes, or I know a lot of my friends, which are from down south, when I went to Laurentian, actually wanted to get away from their parents, and they came up here. So, I mean, I think it's great that, you know, students from outside the area are being encouraged, but like you said, there is a huge need for housing. Laurentian did just put up a new student residence, but there is still just not enough. Not enough apartments. Apartments or student housing that just to meet those needs. So, and especially with the high, I mean, rental prices have skyrocketed in the city. So, and there's just a lot of demand for housing. So I think that's something that, you know, need to try to encourage developers, you know, either by, you know, giving them incentives, or, you know, lower tax or something like that, to try and get them to build new housing for these students, and hopefully work directly with the community in getting these residents up, because a lot, like you said, a lot of them just simply don't want them in the area.
I know a lot of the private developers that are up, like over in Kent Court and some of those places, they do have a certain number of apartments that they rent out to students.
Mm-hmm.
They're there for 2 or 3 years and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got that steady turnover, so I can see where a landlord would much rather get somebody in who's gonna stay there,
Mm-hmm.
rather than come in and out. It's a problem, because, I mean, most developers, they're building their properties to make a profit, not just to provide a service. And so, if we're gonna try to reduce the price or reduce the cost for them to build, that will help them maintain their profit, but it has to be low enough so that the students can afford it. It's a tough
balance.
tough balance, and it's like a number of years ago, we were talking about building a big convention center in Sudbury, and I mean, there's still a lot of talk about that, and it was just one person that just raised and said, you know what if we have a place where we can bring in 4,000 delegates?
Mm-hmm.
how do we get them out on a Sunday night at 5 o'clock? Through the airport? You know, down in Toronto, people go to the Pearson Airport and they're gone all over the place, so you can get rid of that many people. But in Sudbury, it's one thing to put up a conference center, but if you don't have a way to get them in and out in a time